Hello there, and welcome to the Whitey White Guy Show. I'm Whitey. Today I'm going to review the film Rounders, which came out in 1998. This film stars Matt Damon and Edward Norton, as they were just getting started as young actors. They'd both been in a few things, but this was one of the films that it wasn't an immediate success, um, but went on to be a cult classic, considered a cult classic, and is one of the films that is something they worked on that is much beloved for sure. Rounders is I'll read this from Wikipedia. Rounders is a 1998 American drama film about the underground world of high stakes poker. Directed by John Dahl and starring Matt Damon and Edward Norton. The story follows two friends who need to win high stakes poker to quickly pay off a large debt. The term rounders refers to a person traveling from city to city seeking high stakes card games. Rounders opened up to mixed reviews and was moderately successful at the box office. With poker boom in the early 2000s, the film largely became a cult hit. And I would argue that there was a poker boom in the early 2000s at least in part because of this film. Um, New York City law student and gifted poker player Mike McDermott, Matt Damon, dreams of winning the World Series of Poker. At an underground Texas Hold'em game run by Russian mobster Teddy KGB, John Malkovich, an overconfident Mike loses his entire $30,000 bankroll in a single hand. Shaken, he promises his girlfriend and fellow student, Gretchen Mall, he has quit poker and concentrates on law school. His mentor, Joey Knish, played by John Turturro, offers to stake him to rebuild his bankroll, but Mike declines and instead accepts a part-time job to make ends meet. Several months pass, and Mike stays true to his promise until his childhood friend Lester "Worm" Murphy, Edward Norton, is released from prison. While Mike is an honest player, Worm is a hustler and unapologetic cheat. To help Worm pay off a debt, Mike sets him up with games across town and reluctantly sits in on one game, interfering with his studies and relationship with Joe. Mike allows Worm to play on his credit at Chesterfield Club. However, Worm takes out $10,000 and begins a tab in Mike's name. Worm runs into Grandma, Michael Rispoli, a dangerous pimp who has bought Worm's debt. Worm now owes $25,000 directly to Grandma, who is working for KGB. Grandma takes Worm's $10,000, threatening him to pay the rest. As Mike returns to his poker lifestyle and friends, Joe ends their relationship. Mike learns from Petra, Famke Janssen, at the Chesterfield that Worm has racked up $6,000 in debt in Mike's name. In Atlantic City, Worm tells Mike that his debt to Grandma, but withholds that he's working for KGB. Mike promises to Grandma that Worm will pay weekly installments. Grandma considers the offer, but mocks Worm for his inability to pay. Worm responds insulting Grandma, and as two nearly come to blows, Mike diffuses the situation by agreeing to vouch for Worm, and an angry Grandma gives them 5 days to pay the remaining $15,000. Mike decides to help Worm win the money by playing several games in and around the city. And I'll leave it at that for the sake of this review. They end up going around and trying to make all the money that they owe to Grandma, and ultimately to KGB, who's John Malkovich. This is an excellent film. If for some reason you haven't seen the film Rounders, you have to go check this out. If you're over the age of 10 years old, there's some cursing, a little bit of violence, but nothing crazy. A younger teenager, 12, 13, 14, can handle this no problem, especially today. I saw it when I was in high school. I thought it was really good. I wasn't, traumatized by it or nothing. But one of the great things about this film is you don't have to understand poker. Through exposition and dialogue and narration, Matt Damon's character explains enough of what's going on for you, the general audience, to understand it. I don't play poker. I don't know nothing about it, but I was able to follow the film just fine. John Dahl, who directed this, does a great job. Nothing fancy. It feels like a more 1970s style crime film. than what was going on in 1998, which is great because there was a lot of crap coming out in 1998. And then you have, Edward Norton and Matt Damon, Gretchen Mol, they're up and coming actors. You have veterans like John Turturro, John Malkovich. There's just a fantastic cast in this film. It's a lot of fun. It's written very well, it's structured well, tone, pacing, everything is crisp. The acting is crisp. The look is great. John Dahl really captures kind of the culture, the underground culture of these card games that apparently actually exists. It's probably heightened up. You're probably not going to go play some cards and end up running in with the Russian mob. But nevertheless, it has a very authentic, very realistic, gritty feel to it. I can't say enough about the acting from John Turturro to Malkovich, Martin Landau. Everybody's fantastic across the board. At this time, John Turturro has played just such a wide array of characters. A number of whom from like Oh Brother Where Art Thou were a bit more goofy. That's what I kind of knew him for, more outlandish characters. The character he plays in The Big Lebowski, crazy over top characters. This is a much more subdued, down to earth John Turturro, and didn't lose anything for it. Like, this is not a guy who needs to play an over the top character to be an engaging character at all. Matt Damon, of course, Edward Norton, they're fantastic. Gretchen Mall's, oh my god, gorgeous human being, Gretchen Mall. But it's just a really good film. There, with Malkovich, there's criticisms of his Russian. He plays a Russian character, and it isn't realistic Russian. Maybe you're right, but credit where credit's due. Everybody remembers it. So at the same, yeah, is this the best Russian accent ever performed by somebody? No, it's pretty over the top, but it's memorable. So I don't think he tried a typical Russian accent and failed. I think he was going for something memorable and achieved. That's my 2 cents. Ask John Malkovich what he was trying to go for, but we all talk about it, so credit where credit's due. Um, but the characters, Mike McDermott's played by Matt Damon, very down to earth, very relatable character. Worm, you love him, you hate him at the same time, and then you love him some more. And there's as you get into his past a little bit, you don't agree with what he's doing, but you can kind of see where he come from. There's some dialogue about how his dad used to beat him and stuff like that. Both these guys are blue collar guys that came up on Hard Knocks. They've done some things they shouldn't have done, but you can kind of understand how they ended up where they did at the same time. And it's just a lot of fun. So the characters are very well rounded. They feel authentic. Not just from the acting, which again is terrific, but the writing is terrific. Um, I just can't say enough about this film. It was just fantastically done. Mother of God, could we use more films like these days? I mean, this is what's missing in Hollywood. And it's unfortunate that fill in the blank slew of films that were awful around the same period of time. Wild Wild West. I've never actually seen it. Looks awful with Will Smith. That was did money. And this goes under the radar. And it's a flaw in the process but people found it. I ran into this, man, had to still be in high school. So we're talking 20 something years ago. I found it. I loved it. Shouting out to you guys, if you haven't seen it, go check out Rounders. I'm going to expound a little bit on the story. So the Mike McDermott character, you find out in dialogue that he and Wormican, they grew up in very similar circumstances. Their dads were the janitor and the groundskeeper at a fancy prep school of some nature. I'm not familiar with. Maybe it's fictional, maybe it's not. But that's how they got in. And then Worm set up where a player on the basketball team was going to throw the game for a bet. They're going to make some money. They got caught. Worm got caught, and he could have tattled on Mike, but he didn't. And instead, he took the hit. He got kicked out of school. Mike graduated. He's now on his way to being a lawyer. He's going through law school. And Worm's doing time in prison. So you can see how this event set them in two different trajectories. And Worm took the hit. He took the lifelong hit. Mike owes him that loyalty. And again, it's a interesting aspect of the film, a dynamic of the film. There's that loyalty in there. Even though he can't stand Worm's lack of ethics, he's still got to love the guy. They grew up as brothers, and he's got to be there for him. Makes it an intriguing story, and they play it so well. And I don't know that these guys knew each other, Matt Damon and Edward Norton, but as they're going through the film, you feel like they've known each other 20 years at that point. So it feels very authentic. All the relationships with the ladies, you feel that just authenticity there. Gretchen Mol, you can see where she's coming from. She's also like the stuck up bitch, but she's not wrong because she's seen Matt Damon get into trouble before. He blew $30,000 on a single bet. She doesn't want to see that happen again. You get that? At the same time, the man's good at what he does. He's got to be him. He's got to be him. Poker's part of who he is. But she's like, you got to go to law school. You got to play legit. That's and it's the right play on paper, but it's not who he is. Worm's who he is. So Martin Landau plays a judge who's overseeing some of the coursework kind of stuff. He sees the potential that Matt Damon's character has, and he backs him up, saves his butt at one point. They bring in just one scene. They're sitting at a diner. Matt Damon's at the end of his rope. He's got no more outs. This is his last hope. He's basically begging him for $10,000 to give him a bankroll to go get his money back, which is a huge risk. Martin Landau goes into his past about coming up Jewish and wanting to, his Jewish family wanted him to go right. It's who he was to go left, to go be a judge. And so he's in a similar situation, and he's like, it's who you are. You got to be who you are. This is a kismet. Or something like that. Some Jewish word. But with just 2 or 3 scenes that Martin Landau's in, man, do you like this guy? Do you feel for this guy? You feel the passion. You can see it in his eyes. He really cares about this kid like a son. It's just really touching that he helps him out. And in the end of the film, which I don't want to give away, but it's the same thing. You're upping the stakes with every scene, and you're sitting there going, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do this. You're making this mistake again. But you gotta do this. you gotta do this. You gotta get that money back. So the one it didn't quite work in this film, I hate to say it, Michael Rispoli's character, he went on to be in The Sopranos right after this. He plays the henchman. He plays the brute who's gonna kick everybody's ass if he doesn't get what he wants. And at one point, Edward Norton says, "Man, this gorilla man," and I'm like, either you two guys are bigger than he is. So they got the right actor to give the right performance, but the dude's like 5'7", 150 pounds or something. You needed someone who's like 6'3", 275 or something like that. You really don't feel... So they gave him this thick leather jacket, the thickest leather jacket they could find, to try to make him look more threatening than he is. And he doesn't look threatening. But he's a good actor. I like the performance. So I'm kind of conflicted. It's like, I wouldn't change it, but it's like, make him a half foot taller and 100 pounds bigger because he just ain't threatening. That's the one flaw in the film. But I wouldn't change it because the performance was good. So, Rounders, I love it. If you haven't seen it, you got to go check it out. If you enjoying yourself, go check out Rounders. Do yourself a favor. It's a really good film. An hour and a half is going to go by. It's going to feel like 20 minutes. You're not going to regret this at all. So go check out Rounders. Matt Damon, Edward Norton, John Turturro, Martin Landau, Gretchen Mol. There's just up and down a fantastic cast. The film, nothing fancy, but I like the look. A very gritty, down-to-earth look to the film. Very realistic. The characters, they feel like they live in that world. The acting is fantastic. I don't remember thing one about the score. It was there. I'm sure it worked. It queued up at the right times. The job got done. So, Rounders, go check it out. It is fantastic. This is the White Guy Show. I do movie reviews, retro video game reviews. I gotta play this more. Some unboxing, celebrity news, and product review. So, if you like this review, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, leave a comment, help me out with the gosh darn algorithm, and I'll appreciate you for it. And I'll see you on the next video, on the next review. Cheers.